everyone, and a heartfelt welcome to today's webinar. Myself, Pritili. It is a great pleasure to have you all with us for this enriching academic session. Today's topic, the concept of God, is the concept of soul in SAIVA SIDDHANTA. Invite you into the profound philosophical and spiritual world of one of India's most influential SAIVA tradition. SAIVA SIDDHANTA presents a deep understanding of the nature of the soul, its bondage, its relationship with the divine, and the path toward liberation. The subject remains highly relevant for students of philosophy, religions, and spiritual studies alike. We are deeply honored to welcome our distinguished speaker, Dr. Murugesan A, from the Department of Philosophy and Comparative Religion, Visva Bharati University. Dr. Murugesan A is a respected academic and scholar whose expertise in Indian philosophy and comparative religion has contributed greatly to the understanding of classical philosophical traditions. His thoughtful scholarship and insightful interpretation makes him uniquely suited to guide us through today's important discussion. I am certain that today's lecture will provide valuable insights, inspire reflection, and enrich our understanding of Saiva philosophy and its timeless vision of the soul and spiritual liberation. With great respect and anticipation, let us warmly welcome our esteemed speaker, Dr. Murugesan A, to deliver his lecture. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pritili. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your introduction. And I hope I am audible to all.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, very good evening to all. Indeed, it's my joy and privilege to be here on this particular international webinar on the concept of soul in Saiva Siddhanta. I would like to again repeat the title of the talk today, the concept of soul in Saiva Siddhanta. Before I get into the talk, I would like to just have a small recap what we have done so far in the series of lectures. Couple of lectures that I have spoken on: Introduction to Saiva Siddhanta. The second one is the concept of God in Saiva Siddhanta. There are two lectures that I have delivered before this lecture or before this webinar. And in the first webinar, I was talking about Introduction to Saiva Siddhanta. In this series, before that, I was talking about generally with Jainism as well as environmental protection. But the series of lectures in related to Saiva Siddhanta, the first one is Introduction to Saiva Siddhanta, where I was briefly explaining about the definition of the term Saiva Siddhanta, origin and development of Saiva Siddhanta, the scriptures of Saiva Siddhanta. And the second webinar, I was talking on the concept of God in Saiva Siddhanta, where how Lord Shiva has been explained or understood, believed, and practiced in Saiva Siddhanta. In the series of these lectures, the line of lectures, today, I would like to talk on the concept of soul in Saiva Siddhanta. This is also one of the important concepts to need to be understood so that we may able to understand what Saiva Siddhanta exactly talks about: the ultimate reality on the one hand, the soul, Jiva, on the other hand. Now, before I begin my talk, I would like to just give you sources. What are the sources that I have referred? There are major primary sources that I have taken, particularly Sivajnana Mahabharati by Sivajnana Munivar. It is one of the important primary text I use, not only for this concept of soul, even the concept of God also used, and other, the concepts supposed to be understood in the line of Sivanyana Mahabhadiyam of Sivanyana Munivar, one of the important texts, the commentary on, Sivanyana Boga. So, the second important source that I have taken here is Lights on Saiva Siddhanta by Shuddhananda Bharati. Lights on Saiva Siddhanta is a book written by Shuddhananda Bharati, which was published in the year 1955 by Annamalai University, Chidambaram, Tamil Nadu. So these are the two major texts along with the other text that I have referred. Now the concept of God in Saiva Siddhanta. The concept of God very much understood as Lord Shiva. Now, when we understand Lord Shiva as the supreme entity, the ultimate reality, we need to understand, on the other hand, the soul. Now, Saiva Siddhanta very particularly calls soul as Pasu, P-A-S-U, Pasu. Pasu means soul, the self, the Jivatma or Atman, whatever way that we can translate into. So the literal meaning of the Tamil term Pasu means soul. Very equally you can translate into English. Pasu as soul. Now, the concept of soul very much understood in the line of Lord Shiva. For that, I would like to just recollect the core slok from Tirumandiram of 115, where we have, discussed under the concept of God. The same slok talks about Pasu, that is soul as well. Padi Pasu Pasamenum Pahar Mundril, that is in Tamil. Padi Pasu Pasamenum Pahar Mundril, which means Padi is God, Lord Shiva. Pasu is soul, the self, particularly we understand as Atman. Pasam is understood as bondage, the bondage which binds a soul. So now, as we understand here from this slok, Padi Pasu Pasam, when Saiva Siddhanta explains about Lord Shiva, Saiva Siddhanta equally describes Pasu, which means soul as well. Now, we need to understand exactly how to relate soul in relation to the world, soul in relation to the fellow human beings, which means the fellow soul, and the Almighty, the ultimate reality. These are the three dimensions actually. So before I get into those, all the three dimensions, that sequence of a series of lectures, I would like to explain it. But in this particular webinar, I would like to explain on the concept of soul here. So the first one, we understand the term Pasu as soul in Saiva Siddhanta. The second one, how many numbers of soul that we have? What Saiva Siddhanta talks about the numbers of soul. According to Saiva Siddhanta, the numbers of soul, which means innumerable, uncountable. So there is no limit of numbers of soul. Souls are many. Souls in numbers, multiple. This is what Saiva Siddhanta explains. There is no a particular limited numbers of souls. Innumerable souls. Saiva Siddhanta accepts that. So this is related to the number of souls. The first one, I said definition of the term soul, Pasu, in Saiva Siddhanta, as translated as soul in English, and the numbers of soul, innumerable, uncountable. This is what we understand. The third important thing, as we understand soul in Saiva Siddhanta, the classifications. How to classify souls based on the bondage and the liberation. So please very clearly take the point here. Saiva Siddhanta tried to explain the classifications of soul on the basis of its bondage in relation to liberation. The bonded soul, the liberated soul. Now, when we understand the classifications, usually in general level, we can understand that there are 5 different classifications as we understand soul in Saiva Siddhanta. The first one, which is known as Sakala. Sakala we understand as the soul which is bonded with 3 fetters, 3 bondages. The 3 bondages are Anava, Karma, Maya. Now, if the soul is bonded with 3 fetters, 3 bondages, they are known as Sakala. That particular soul is by nature is known as Sakala. All the 3 bonded soul. The second classifications of soul in Saiva Siddhanta, of course, you may find it in Kashmir Saivism also equally explains that. Same way. Pralayakala. Pralayakala means the soul which is bonded with the 3 fetters, 3 bondages. The one is Anava, the other one is Karma. The Anava and Karma bonds that particular soul. By name we understand as Pralayakala. The third classification of soul in Saiva Siddhanta is Vijnanakala, which means bonded with only one fetter, one bondage, that is Anava, Anavam. So now, Sakala bonded with 3 bondages, Pralayakala bonded with 2 malas or 2 fetters, and Vijnanakala we understand as one fetter or one bondage, which is known as Anava, bonded with Anava, which is known as Vijnanakala. Now, still Saiva Siddhanta explains about the soul in relation to bondage as well as liberation, I said. For example, Saiva Siddhanta addresses Jivan Mukta. Who is this Jivan Mukta? What kind of soul is this? According to Saiva Siddhanta, Jivan Mukta is liberated but still existing in this particular body in this world. Therefore, the person who is known as Jivan Mukta, who is completely liberated but still existing in this world, and still there is a kind of interpretation is this. Sometimes it is known as bonded with Maya. Maya means the body exists. Therefore, once the person leaves the body, the Jivan Mukta attains a complete liberation. The complete liberation is called Paramukta. So now, the 5th stage is called Paramukta. The soul reaches the complete state of freedom in Saiva Siddhanta, who is known as Paramukta. So, started from Sakala, Pralayakala, Vijnanakala, Jivan Mukta, and the 5th one is Paramukta, which means completely liberated. So now these are the 5 classifications very clearly talks about related to soul, regarding soul. The 4th one I would like to just give you a brief account on what kind of nature, the eternal nature of soul, what Saiva Siddhanta talks about it. According to Saiva Siddhanta, the soul very much understood as completely free. When we talk about the eternal nature of soul, It's completely free. In a way, we can say that the soul is eternal, eternally free. It does not have any kind of bondage in a way, and full of knowledge, full of bliss. That's the eternal nature of soul. But when it is bonded, the bonded with anava, karma, maya, there the purity of soul comes down. This is what Saiva Siddhanta explains it. So now the eternally soul is free, eternally soul is knowledgeable, eternally soul is completely blissful, the state of blissful. This is what Saiva Siddhanta talks about. In the same way, again, in relation to nature, Saiva Siddhanta further explains about the relational nature as well. Just before I said that eternal nature of soul, and Saiva Siddhanta describes about the relational nature of soul. What is exactly relational? When soul relates itself with Lord Shiva, where the soul is pure. The purity of soul is understood in relation to Lord Shiva. Suppose if the soul does not have that relation with Lord Shiva, now the soul just joins with mala of any mala, whether it is anava or karma or maya, then the soul nature is impure. The pure nature of soul, the impure nature of soul, the purity and impurity. The purity is understood in relation to Lord Shiva. The purity of soul is understood in relation to its relation with bondage, whether it is with anava or maya or karma, whatever. Whether it may be three as sagala, or it may be only two as pralayagala, or maybe only anava, that may be vijnanakala, but still it is impure. The purity is in relation to Lord Shiva. The impurity of soul in relation to its bondage with whatever level. So, according to Saiva Siddhanta, we understand that the soul is pure, the soul is knowledgeable, the soul is blissful, the soul is completely free, but when it joins with, when it is attracted towards the bondage, where the purity of the soul is missing. So it's the simplest way to understand the nature of soul in two ways: eternal nature and the relational nature, according to Saiva Siddhanta. Further, I would like to just a bit describe about the nature of soul in relation to God. How do we understand how the the soul in relation to God as similar, how in relation to God and soul, between relationship between God and soul, dissimilar, I mean different. The first point I would like to explain how soul and God is similar in nature. What Saiva Siddhanta talks about it. The first one, Saiva Siddhanta talks about Chit Shakti. What is Chit Shakti here? We understand the power of consciousness, the pure consciousness. In relation to pure consciousness, Lord Shiva, soul, these are similar. Lord Shiva also is full of pure consciousness. In relation to soul also, we understand that pure consciousness. It's an eternal nature. This is eternal nature in relation to soul. So there is a close relationship between Lord Shiva and Jiva. Now, Chit Shakti talks about both are pure. At the same time, again, the relationship between God and soul, we understand that Icha Shakti. In Icha Shakti also, we understand that the power of will. The power of will we understand in relation to Lord Shiva and soul. Both are similar. Pure consciousness and the power of will, Icha Shakti. We understand that the relationship between God and soul, which means Shiva and soul, we understand similar. Further, we understand Jnana Shakti, the knowledge, the power of knowledge. The power of knowledge, we understand that here, Lord Shiva and the soul in relation to the power of knowledge, similar. This is what we understand Chit Shakti, Icha Shakti, Jnana Shakti, and of course, Kriya Shakti, the power of action. Lord Shiva and soul, the similarity we find between these, two, Lord Shiva and soul. So, Saiva Siddhanta says that in nature, we understand in relation to Lord Shiva is very close. Whether it is Chit Shakti or Kriya Shakti, Jnana Shakti or Icha Shakti, all the four, we understand that God and the soul shares the same nature. This is what we understand. For example, I would like to tell you here, some of the times people say that by action, when the person helps the other person, the person who received the help, immediately he or she sees the person who helped him or her as God. I mean, as a savior. This is what we understand then, which means he finds it like at the time of such a trouble, the person helps and the person saves a person from, someone from such a danger. Anything would be, in our life, we understand that. So there we understand that these are all the relations in relation to God, we get that particular nature. The person says that, there are times we understand that whether I see God or not, but I see God in you, because the person whom the person, help the other person, he or she accepts that, completely accepts. So this is what we understand in relation to the nature of all the four in Saiva Siddhanta, whether starting with the Chit Shakti, Jnana Shakti, Kriya Shakti, Icha Shakti, all talks about the quality of that nature. We find it with soul as well. This is what Saiva Siddhanta explains in relation, the relationship between Lord Shiva and Jiva, soul, Pasu. Again, Saiva Siddhanta is very clear. We cannot say that it is one and the same, because Saiva Siddhanta is a dualistic school, which talks about the difference between the soul and God. So where we understand that there are dissimilarities as well. What Saiva Siddhanta talks about in relation to the dissimilarities between Lord Shiva and Pasu, which is known as soul. For example, in relation to omnipotent, omnipresence, omniscience, what all the things we understand in relation to the nature of Lord Shiva cannot be equalized with Pasu in Saiva Siddhanta. Pasu is not omnipotent, Pasu is not omnipresent, Pasu is not omniscient. Therefore, there is a big difference between Lord Shiva and the Pasu, which is known as soul. So now in this particular context, in this particular nature, Lord Shiva is different from soul. The second one, in relation to change, God is changeless. Lord Shiva is changeless. Whereas soul, in nature, it changes. In nature, when we say that, for example, in relation to Lord Shiva, it becomes pure. In relation to Anava, Karma, Maya, it becomes impure. The change in its quality. The soul's quality changes because of its relation. The relation with Lord Shiva is pure. The relationship with bondage, the bondage of anything, whether Anavamala or Mayamala or Karmamala, where we understand impurity of the soul. Here we understand that there is a difference, a big difference between Lord Shiva and Pasu, which is known as soul. This is the way we understand in relation to the dissimilarities between Lord Shiva and soul in Saiva Siddhanta. On the one hand, very clearly talks about the relationship between, the similarity between Lord Shiva and Pasu, whereas there is a big difference between Lord Shiva and Pasu in that particular nature. Further, I would like to just give you a brief account, then I would like to explain one or few concepts over there. How do we understand the relationship between God and soul in relation to the action? Is there difference or similar? Or in other words, we can say similar or dissimilar. On the one hand, I told you that when we talk about Kriya Shakti, in Kriya Shakti, the power of action is very clearly explained in Saiva Siddhanta as God is omnipotent, omniscience, omnipresence. We can understand very clearly in relation to action. Lord Shiva knows all or everything. Lord Shiva can do anything because he is all powerful. God's presence is everywhere, which means Lord Shiva's presence is everywhere. Now, in this relation, when we understand the nature of soul, the nature of soul cannot be that particular power. The soul cannot be all powerful, but it's full of knowledge. The knowledge, the bliss, the freedom, the consciousness, we understand that, of course, in related to power of will, we understand that it has its own, but it cannot be equalized with the action of God. The action of God is higher. The action of Lord Shiva is higher, whereas the action of soul is limited. It's limited. That's very clear in Saiva Siddhanta. Now, when we understand here, Lord Shiva is all powerful, where the soul is not that powerful as equal to Lord Shiva. What about after the liberation? Is it just continues even after the liberation also the same? According to Saiva Siddhanta, yes, even after the liberation also it is different. That's why we understand Saiva Siddhanta as a dualistic philosophy, dualistic thought, dualistic system. So now Lord Shiva and the Pasu is completely different in its nature, in its action. This is what Saiva Siddhanta very clearly explains it. I would like to again highlight a little more in relation to the liberation of soul. What about after the liberation of soul? What Saiva Siddhanta talks about it? Saiva Siddhanta very clearly talks about after the liberation, how the soul or the Pasu in relation to Lord Shiva after the freedom. Now, Saiva Siddhanta talks about the stage here. I'm just trying to explain here. After the liberation, after complete liberation from the bondage. After the complete liberation means, I would like to tell you here, completely liberated from Anavamala, completely liberated from Karmamala, completely liberated from Mayamala, which means a complete freedom. So after the complete freedom, where the soul, what is the relationship between the liberated soul and the Almighty, Lord Shiva. What Saiva Siddhanta talks about it. There also we can understand very clearly. Saiva Siddhanta says that, yes, there is a difference between the state of liberated soul and the ultimate reality, Lord Shiva. For example, there are 4 levels they understand after the liberation. If the soul liberated and enters into the presence of Lord Shiva, which is known as, with other tradition also we know the same term like this, Salokya. Salokya is the soul, the liberated soul is in the realm of God, in the realm of Lord Shiva, in the world of Lord Shiva. So Salokya stage. The liberated soul attains the Salokya stage. Now, which soul attains that Salokya stage? Saiva Siddhanta again explains, if the soul takes the position of the path of Dasamarga, the path of service, that particular soul after the liberation reaches to the level of Salokya. I'm just trying to explain here, after the liberation, how these are the stages in Saiva Siddhanta we understand them. So the path of service leads to Salokya. The soul takes the position of Salokya, which means in the world of Lord Shiva, in the realm of Lord Shiva. The second, of course, we understand it is Samipya. What is Samipya according to Saiva Siddhanta again? Saiva Siddhanta says that if the soul takes the path of, Satpudra Marga as a son relationship, the relationship between the father and son, where we understand after the liberation, the soul reaches to the stage of Samipya, where it is near to God, near to Lord Shiva. The stage of liberated soul is known as Samipya in Saiva Siddhanta. The third stage, again, after the liberation, the soul takes into the position of Sarupya, the form of Lord Shiva. It is not the same as Lord Shiva, but just the form of Shiva, Sarupya. The soul which takes the path of contemplation, the Sahamarga, the friendship like Lord Shiva, and the soul takes that relationship, which is known as Sarupya. The last one, which is considered as the highest state of liberated soul in Saiva Siddhanta, is Sayujya, where the path of truth, Sanmarga, the Sanmarga leads to the stage of Sayujya, which is known as the highest state of the soul. So now, even after the liberation, what the level of the soul will take the position in the liberated state, also explained by Saiva Siddhanta very clearly. Starting from Salokya, Samipya, Sarupya, and Sayujya in relation to the path of liberation. So now all together, Saiva Siddhanta is very clear to explain about how the soul is supposed to be understood. So till now, I would like to just, recollect it again. What are the things that I said for the last few minutes? I just started with Pasu. How do we understand a soul in Saiva Siddhanta? From Tirumular, Tirumandaram, Padi Pasu Pasu Pasamenum Pakar Mundri. I just quoted that particular sloka. And then I said, innumerable number of souls. The classifications of souls, I said the five, coming from Sakala, Pralayakala, Vijnanakala, and Jivan Mukta and Paramukta. Then I was just briefly explaining about the eternal nature of soul. It's completely free. It's completely full of knowledge, full of bliss. And relational nature of soul also I said. When the soul joins with Lord Shiva, the purity of soul we understand it. When the soul relates itself with the bondage, which is known as impure state of soul, then I was just describing about the relationship between Pati and Pasu, which means Lord Shiva and soul, where I was just telling you about Kriya Shakti, Icha Shakti, Jnana Shakti, and then where we understand that how they are similar. At the same time, we understand on the other hand, they are different. They are in the sense Lord Shiva and Pasu, soul, because of omnipotent, omniscience, omnipresence, cannot be equalized with soul. And then further, I was just little bit explaining about how the action that we understand very briefly, the power of God in relation to action, and the power of soul in relation to action. And the last one, just right now, I explained about even after the liberation, also, Saiva Siddhanta very clearly explains that there are four stages: Salukya, Samipya, Sarupya, Sayujya. Even after the liberation, we understand that. Now, these are all the things that I said very briefly just a few minutes before. Now, when we understand soul in Saiva Siddhanta, we are very clear in relation to the birth. How do we understand the karma? How do we relate the soul in relation to bondage? All said very clear. Stage by stage, Saiva Siddhanta explains in its 12 Tirumurais and 14 Shastras, the philosophical treatise, along with other scholarly texts. As we understand here, Lord Shiva is all powerful in relation to his action, whereas we understand soul is also powerful but not as equal to Lord Shiva. Even after the liberation also, soul cannot just reflects, or soul cannot enjoins with Lord Shiva in its nature. This difference we understand that. But again, I would like to highlight to you friends here. There are interpretations that we try to understand that in the level of Sayujya, in Saiva Siddhanta itself, a group of scholars, some notable scholars, try to explain in relation to Lord Shiva and soul as one and the same. This interpretation also you come across within Saiva Siddhanta tradition. But very clear with the original text, which means the primary text, that we understand that they are different in a nature. One and the same, when we say that, there a completely we understand that the relationship between Lord Shiva and soul mixes as one and the same. This is not very much explained in Saiva Siddhanta. Even after the liberation also, there is a distinction. The distinction between the ultimate reality and the liberated soul. I'm not talking about the bonded soul. With the bonded soul, completely different. We understand that. Whereas even after the liberation also, Saiva Siddhanta very clearly explains its layer, like starting from Salukya to last one, Sayujya. We understand that. But still, the same terms have been used in other traditions also, like one and the same also in relation to Sayujya, we understand that. But Saiva Siddhanta is very clear. It's a dualistic school of thought where we understand Lord Shiva and Pasu, soul, is different. So now, in relation to nature, these are all the things that I was explaining into. When we talk about the liberation of soul from the bondage, also we understand that the soul supposed to be matured enough. Saiva Siddhanta very clearly says that it is not just only divine grace alone. Divine grace is, very important, as we understand in Kashmir Saivism. In the same way, Saiva Siddhanta also, Shaktini Pada, the divine grace, the sudden, you know, the descendants of divine grace is important. But at the same time, the maturity of the soul, the maturity of the pasu have been explained very well in Saiva Siddhanta. So now, when we understand the nature of soul, right now I was just talking to you till now, the nature of soul actually. I'm not talking about the bondage of soul, and then I didn't talk about completely about the liberation of soul. That's a different, segment supposed to be. So the nature of soul itself, Saiva Siddhanta very clear that we understand that under the bondage, the soul is different. Even under the freedom also, the soul is different. When we say different, different in relation to God, in relation to Lord Shiva, we are talking about. So now, under the bondage, completely different from Lord Shiva, because Lord Shiva is pure, whereas bonded soul is impure. Bonded soul is impure. Even though the soul is bonded with only one mala, which is anava, still impure. So now, under the bondage, the soul is completely different from Lord Shiva, which means Lord Shiva is pure, the bonded soul is impure. That's very clear. That's no problem at all. Whereas in Saiva Siddhanta further, after liberation also, very clearly says that there is a big difference between Lord Shiva and the liberated soul. Liberated completely from all the bondages, including the primal bondage or the major bondage which is known as Anavamala. Even after that particular liberation also, the soul is different. That's what we understand in Saiva Siddhanta. So this is all together in relation to the nature of soul alone that I was just briefing you. And then under the bondage, how the soul attracts towards anava, karma, maya, why they are not able to come out from those bondages. These are the next segment actually, and we supposed to take one by one. And I hope these are all the things that you are able to get into the nature of soul in Saiva Siddhanta. I hope that you are able to get the essence of that nature of soul in Saiva Siddhanta that I explained. That's it. So thank you so much for listening me, and we will have a time of interaction. And if you have any ideas or anything that you have come across, also if you share with us, it will be very good. Once again, thank you to Modak Trainer Academy and giving me a chance to explain about the nature of soul. Now I have just given around 10 to 15 minutes of time of interaction would be good to talk about the nature of soul. Thank you.